Hey, what is up, mortals? Season 2 Part 5. Just wanted to greet you guys by just saying sit back and relax. You're in for a treat, so we begin. Where's Coda? It had been 3 days since the camp started, and the exhausted students were making dinner. They were going to have a test of courage, but at that moment, the greenette's mind was filled with worry. He really hates being around us, Next is the test of courage. Mina and a group of Wana students started to cheer when Aizawa cut off their happiness by dragging them back to the classroom. Sheesh, that's harsh. Takage whistled and Monoma nodded. If he and Shizaki hadn't cooperated, he would have probably been in the same predicament. After deciding that Class B would be the first to scare, Izuku excitedly bounced on the tip of his toes. They were permitted to use their quirks, and that only made it even better as hushed whispers were thrown around. Fifth pair to go. Ribbit Kitty, Uraraka Kitty, go. Pixie Bob directed the pair to go onto the forest, and the two held hands as screams filled the forest. Honuki popped his head out of the bush to compliment their section's latest scare with a laugh. Nice going, Kodai. You managed to scare everybody so far, you big creeper. Izuku gave her a thumbs up from the tree he stood in, and the girl smiled. I can't get over how funny Bakugo and Todoroki were. The recommendation student cackled as he remembered the scene. After walking through a completely dark section of the forest with Izuku jumping back and forth between the trees to catch their attention, they walked into the clearing. The area was completely silent. The two walked forward, then froze. Kodai's head had popped out from the ground. I thought they were tough. What was that? Oh. Honuki continued to cackle to himself about the hilarious shocked expressions. Both boys had their eyes widened simultaneously, and it was the funniest thing. He couldn't stop laughing, and Izuku looked around before feeling uneasy. There was something wrong, and since he was in the trees, it was a lot easier to detect. Something's burning. Smoke. Hey guys, look out. There's purple smoke heading toward us. Anxiety crawled up his spine as Izuku's danger sense was screaming for him to act. Something wasn't right. He was sure of it now. What? It's probably just Bakugo or Todoroki letting off their quirks from the scare, right? Kodai saw Izuku's expression and knew it was serious. She didn't hesitate to climb up into the tree he was in as the recommendation student sighed and joined them. It was then they noticed it too. The thin smell of smoke. Standing up, Honuki immediately scanned the area and to his horror saw black smoke with blue sparks rising in the distance. We have to get out of here. The greenette immediately scooped up Kodai and jumped from tree to tree as Honuki returned to the ground and swam under the surface. Now, it begins. The three of them were making their way directly back to camp and grouped with Asui and Uraraka on the way back, telling them it was an emergency situation to get back. The Wana girls nodded. Everyone. Mandalay's telepath reached out to as many people as she could as she updated everyone on the situation. We're currently being attacked by two villains, and it's very likely there are more. Return to camp immediately. Weren't we going to her to be more safe? Honuki yelled as they ran faster, and no one could reply. That was when the rest of Wana and the heroes came to view and the greenette stopped. Two villains were standing on top of the injured Pixie Bob's head, and Mandalay was instructing Kendo to lead the class away. However, her worried expression was all he needed as he realized a small figure was missing from the scene. Koda, mind spinning, he quickly turned to the others. Uraraka and Asui, right. Go with Kodai and Honuki to your class and head to the camp. I have somewhere I need to check first. And without letting them talk, the freckled boy turned away. Mandalay, I know where he is. Before anyone could say anything, the greenette immediately ran off, and out of worry, Honuki followed. Kodai was going to follow too, but decided to stay with the Wana girls and return to the others. Everything was all jokes just a couple of minutes ago, and now everything was spiraling into chaos. Trying to keep breathing to a minimum as they ran toward the purple gas, the sound of the bushes rustling stopped the two in their tracks. Tetsu, how did you get those masks? The silver boy carried Shizaki in his arms and quickly explained how Yaoyorozu was passing their scare section when the attack started. The creation girl was the one to make the gas masks, and Izuku exhaled slightly in relief. It was good to know that Oase was directing the mask supplier to the others since he knew their location. Here, take one. Izuku popped on the mask as he relayed the instruction to return to camp, but Tetsu shook his head. No, I'm going to fight. As a hero, I can't turn my back to wrongdoers. Honuki softened the ground and sank Shizaki and himself in before shrinking the hole. However, just before the ground swallowed the two up, the recommendation student passed back two gas masks. Here. What? Izuku was confused about what was going on and gave a skeptical look. We'll be underground so the gas won't reach us. You know there's no point stopping when he's on a roll. I'll help by taking Shizaki to safety. Deciding it was good enough, Izuku grabbed onto the 2 gas masks and Tetsu tightened the 3rd spare on his waist. Honuki and Shizaki disappeared below the ground as the Greenette regained their bearings. They were still only just in the poison gas's radius, and it was hard to see through the purple mist. However, the mountain wasn't hard to see, and the freckled boy was about to start running when Tetsu halted him in his step. Deku, turning to face him. The silver boy pointed at the deadly gas. "You're smart. Tell me where the villain is." "What? Why?" The Greenette looked at him like he was crazy, but after a pause, he thought about it. The poison gas is obviously someone's quirk, and by the quantity and density, they're skilled. This means there's a high chance the person behind it is weaker than Tetsu physically. It definitely would help more if people could see. Gritting his teeth, Izuku looked at the swirling purple and pointed at the center of the vortex. It was clearly more dense and thicker. They're probably right at the center, most likely. Measures to no incoming people. Maybe the mist could even tell them our locations. They'll have ways to retaliate. You can't do it alone, but it's reckless. But do you want to try? If there are physically strong reinforcements, retreat immediately though. Grinning at the option to fight, Tetsu nodded, and the 2 immediately ran out of the poison gas reach, quickly heading up a tree to be above the gas. Steel was activated, and Izuku let one for all run through his veins, drawing back a 5% punch. The Greenette looked toward the center of the poisonous gas. "You ready?" Tetsu gritted his teeth and nodded. He was going to be like a cannonball, launching a surprise attack on whoever was at the center. Smash! Just like that, the Greenette headed toward his target and ran up the mountain. Koda, eyes widening. Izuku's body trembled with both anger and fear. The Greenette had found the child, but not alone. Koda was dangling by the leg and held up by a manically laughing villain. The boy had no extreme injuries, but judging by the small craters that filled the area, the emerald eyes shone with anger. He realized the massive villain was toying with the child's life, wanting nothing else than to save him. The Greenette was about to rush in when he realized a head-on attack would likely injure Koda too. He's already in that villain's hand. Plus, he would see me before I attack. I need to jump in somehow, make him unsteady for even a few seconds, and run. The Greenette silently ran up the hidden side path and past the platform where the other 2 were, quickly climbing to the top of the mountain. The emerald eyes locked on the villain who stood below. "I haven't properly tested this out yet, but..." Smash, landing feet first. The villain received a heavy kick to the face, and the Greenette wobbled a little on the landing. Koda fell to the floor, and before the freckled boy could stop to think about the beginning of his new style, his body ran forward, grabbing the child into his arms. The Greenette leapt backwards as the villain stood up. "I need to get Koda out of here." The villain was still dazed, and Izuku quickly put the child on his back, immediately dashing off. "Why are you here?" Koda yelped, and Izuku just smiled as he jumped onto the forest floor. The child was almost certain he faced death, yet here he was, on the Greenette's back and capable of seeing the moon. "Because I'm going to be a hero. I don't want anyone else to die on my watch." Izuku's words brought back memories, and the child became quiet. Emotions he wasn't used to having bubbled up. The child buried his face into Izuku's back. They landed on the forest floor near, and the student handed Koda a mask. The mist was still thick, but Tetsu must have got whoever was causing the mist. Muscular. The villain, who was just killing time by traumatizing a kid he found, shook his head with annoyance. The kick was not something that could knock him out, but the surprise did catch him completely off guard. Interesting, that kid was on the list. With a grin, the villain ignored orders to stay put and immediately jumped from the mountain. He landed with a heavy thud on the forest floor before heading in the direction Izuku ran in. "The mist is lifting." They got mustered pretty quickly, with it being a lot easier to see and breathe. Todoroki let out a long sigh as he adjusted the unconscious Tsuburaba into a more comfortable position on his back. "Let's avoid the finish line and go straight to camp. Don't tell me what to do, icy hot." The 2 could walk forward a lot easier now, but as they did, the blonde froze. "Hey, who was ahead of us again?" Takoyami and Shoji. The heterochromatic eyes followed the rubies and settled on a hunched man. The person was drooling and mumbling to themselves as they admired a severed hand. "So pretty. I need to work, but oh, what beautiful flesh." The feisty blonde could only swear under his breath as the figure turned towards them. He was wearing a limb-binding skin-tight suit that held his mouth open, and a slight trace of blood could be seen. "And they're telling us not to fight." "Izuku Midoriya." Muscular hollered the Greenette's name as he ran after the glow of the boy's discharge. There was no way he was letting a good fight escape him, and also because it was part of the job. The freckled boy heard the holler and his blood froze. They were extremely close to camp, and any closer, more people were going to get hurt. Skidding to a stop, the child was promptly set onto the ground. "Koda, listen to me. Camp is less than a minute run from here, so please find a teacher." "What about you?" the kid asked, and Izuku shook his head. I need to be a diversion. If I go any closer, that villain could hurt more people. The child didn't want to agree. This villain was the one to kill his parents and had forced the child to see death's face. Nothing was more terrifying, and he wants to face him. Is he crazy? But before Kota could try and convince Izuku to not fight, the greenette had stood up, run, with no choice but to follow. The small legs headed toward the camp. One for all ran through every cell of Izuku's body. The power flowed like oxygen from his arms to his legs, and all his senses were at their peak. The second he heard the footsteps near, the freckled boy dashed away from camp. I will protect everyone. I hope you can protect all you students, huh? Erasure. Aizawa watched as the villain Dabai turned into a pile of mud on the floor as his students came running out of the woods. At the same time, Kota wobbled out with tears in his eyes, which flowed faster as he made eye contact with the teacher, Uraraka. One of the students who turned up ran over to bring the child to safety when Kota cried out, I don't know his name. That villain called him Izuku Mido, the one with green hair. He's being chased. Aizawa's eyes widened as he realized Kota meant one of Vlad's students. Uraraka looked at the child in her arms and realized this was why the greenette had run from Mandalay earlier. Knowing this made her hold on to Kota protectively. Get inside. I'll be right back. Inform Vlad King on what's happening. The one a teacher ran off in the direction Kota appeared at and could already hear a fight. Come on, Midoriya. Show me some blood. Muscular grinned sadistically as he got up and made his way over intimidatingly. The greenette was using his superior mobility to his advantage to drop down from the trees, but Muscular was simply stronger. Why are you after us? Izuku yelled back. The two started fighting within seconds of Kota disappearing from sight, and the greenette was pale from worry. The villain had asked him if he had seen Katsuki Bakugo and that both the blonde and himself were targets. Playtime's over. I need to catch you alive. Gritting his teeth, the greenette dashed around the close-growing trees before diving down onto Muscular. Smash! His movements were ones that imitated Kaibara's fighting style, coming from random angles with his body weight, feet first, letting one for all flow not upward, but downward felt more comfortable, and the boy found that he had a lot more flexibility. Boom! Not bad, but where's that bone-breaking anger from, huh? The freckled boy jumped back in surprise. The muscle fibers that wrapped around the villain suddenly unraveled, exposing just a normal strong man. What erg? Get back, kid. Izuku turned to see Aizawa's glaring red eyes. The man's capture scarf wrapped around the struggling villain's body, and the greenette's mind spun. Right. I need to. He quickly thanked the teacher before yelling, I need to find Mandalay. But before the greenette ran off again, the one a teacher stopped him in his tracks. Wait, kid. To the video maker. This is a change of scene if it doesn't make sense. Sorry for adding so many jump scenes. Grinning face with sweat. Oh dear. You're so close. The villain, Magni, was dodging Tiger's attacks by predicting his moves. Mandalay was running around avoiding Spinner's blades. You're not a real hero at all. The mutant-type villain swung his sword around wildly as Mandalay yelled in frustration. You're so persistent. The villain smiled back before raising his weapon high in the air above the hero. So are you. Hurry up and be purged already. Smash. Izuku came dashing in, feet first, and the sword in Spinner's hand broke into individual pieces. Huh, Mandalay. Kota's okay. It's you. And here's a message from Mr. Aizawa. Tell everyone with telepath. The hero immediately reacted, activating her quirk so it reached as far as she could. Everyone in camp received the urgent call. Everyone in Class A and B. In the name of the pro hero. Erase your head. You are granted permission to engage in combat. I repeat, you are hereby granted permission to engage in combat. Get him. Tiger's instinct to jump forward and intercept Magni saved the greenette from being caught. Seeing that this place wasn't safe, Izuku turned to run off again, but as he did, he shouted, please tell everyone one more thing. The villains. Their targets are at least Kaken and me. How does he know? The two villains present froze momentarily. Their plan had been exposed. They only knew one who didn't care for secrecy as long as he got bloodthirsty fight, but that meant he encountered Muscular and got out without a scratch. By the looks of it, he's only tired. That moment of confusion, however, was their downfall as the pro heroes immediately jumped in, seeing two unconscious villains. Mandalay let out a satisfied huff as she sent out another message. We have discovered two of the villains' targets, the green-haired boy from 1B and a student called Kaken, the 1B student who just separated from us to avoid villains. Both you and Kaken please regroup. Try to avoid combat and acting independently. The fierce blonde himself grumbled at the nickname as he could guess what had happened. Kaken, what did that damn nerd get himself into? Bakugo, look out. A wave of ice blocked a barrage of swords flying in their direction as Todoroki skidded to a halt. I have to do my job. The villain was being held in the air by the swords protruding from his teeth, and Bakugo scoffed. He was itching for a fight and pissed that he was being given too many instructions. Fight? Then don't fight. Make up your mind, damn it. Izuku ran through the forest as he tried to calculate people's positions. However, the shadow by his feet shifted and a familiar mop of white hair appeared. Class Rep. Kiwaro. The boy nodded and pulled himself out of the ground. You mustn't travel through the darkness alone. I shall accompany you. But how did you find me? I know you can navigate through the darkness. But how did you look over so much space? The greenette ran as he talked, and Kiwaro was swimming through the ground. Well, it's not too hard to know you're worried for that blonde in 1A. He passed my section, so I used that too. What happened? Izuku immediately sped up to reach Mizo Shoji. Someone from the first courage testing pair. The dupla-armed boy was bleeding and the sound of an inhuman roar could be heard. We were attacked by a villain and I just covered for us. But seeing my blood caused Takoyami to lose control of his quirk. That's Takoyami. Yes, he's reacting to any movement or sound at the moment. The greenette remembered what he read on the student from the cavalry battle, but he didn't expect the quirk to grow this large at night. He's the Brethren of Darkness, is he not? Kiwaro spoke up as he eyes the black mass violently crashing around. Can you control that much? The answer is uncertain, but I can probably control enough to attack away. Izuku nodded, but the sound of blades crashing through ice caught his ear. Wait, I have an idea. The greenette pointed in the direction and Vanta Black understood. I'll do what I can. Todoroki and Bakugo had been running from the incoming blades, which the bi-colored boy misdirected with ice. However, by doing so, they got cornered by another villain. Lucky me, I get to try and capture a target. Bakugo, crash. Hey Moonfish, you almost got me. Toga was already disappointed because the girls she had been following were taken by a group back to the pros at the beginning. It was led by their second target, and seeing her toys get taken from her made the blonde sad. However, the blade villain ignored her as he was also angry. Stop trying to take my flesh. The two villains argued on who got to capture the target when the sound of trees crashing apart could be heard. Get out the way. Izuku and Shoji were running toward the group and Moonfish looked annoyed. The weapons from his mouth grew in size and the villain leapt at Dark Shadow. Don't take away my flesh. Within an instant, Moonfish was crushed by the hulking shadow. Those who hadn't seen the monstrous shadow yet were shaken at how powerful the quirk could be when Shoji yelled out, "We need light." The two watched as Kiwaro struggled to control the dark shadow within Takoyami and immediately reacted, with a small burst of fire and explosions. Vanta Black jumped out and the quirk was subdued. Are you okay? Shoji asked his friend who sat on the floor panting. The bird-like boy nodded and thanked everyone for their help. Wait, there's another one. Todoroki turned around, however the blonde villain wasn't anywhere to be seen. TCH, the psycho got away. We need to get back to camp. Mr. Vlad and Eraserhead are there, so it's probably the safest place. There was no point in chasing a villain, especially with the group now containing their two targets. I'm already escorting him, but he insisted on finding you first. Kiwaro nodded and Bakugo scratched his hair. Arg, why do I need to get protected? We need to get everyone back safely. Making a square formation with Kiwaro, Takoyami, Shoji and Todoroki carrying the unconscious Tsuburaba. Izuku and Bakugo had to walk in the middle. Do you know why they're targeting you too? The greenette tried to recall Muscular's words, but the musclehead didn't reveal much. I just know that Kakin and I are targeted for probably what we showed during the sports festival. What you showed? I'm not following. Well, the villain said, bone-breaking anger, so I assumed he meant my fight with you, Todoroki. It was most likely because of their fight, as powerful as it was. It mostly was just the greenette yelling at Todoroki before beating him up, and then Bakugo's overall performance could be summed up in that too. This is stupid. However, as they reached the camp, the students stared in horror at the fight breaking out. Aizawa was bleeding and against a wall as Vlad was holding off Muscular. Oh no, Izuku felt horrible. The reason he had run from when Aizawa took over in the first place was because of the USJ. He underestimated his homeroom teacher when Vlad was against the league and didn't want to do it again. Except now he overestimated. The blood shone darkly in the moonlight and the sight reminded Izuku of Ida. Tensing up, the greenette was about to jump in when Kiwaro placed an arm on his shoulder. Calm down. Look, even though Aizawa lay there unmoving, the teacher was still fighting, as every once in a while the muscle fibers unraveled themselves. Vlad would take advantage and pummel Muscular to the floor, and with their combined effort, the S-class villain was taken down. They did it. His knees felt weak and Izuku sat on the floor. The rush of emotions brought his adrenaline rush to an abrupt stop and he sat there exhausted. Shoji took the unconscious Tsuburaba from Todoroki to bring him indoors as the bi-colored boy encased the tied-up villain in ice. Takoyami went to his homeroom teacher, who went inside, and Vlad joined him, telling the kids to follow promptly to plan what to do next. Kiwaro stretched his limbs out a bit. It felt nice to have a small moment in the middle of the tense fight. They now secured a safe spot. See Midoriya. There was no need to tense. The boy made out of darkness paused as he looked around. Everything was fine a moment ago. Midoriya, the boy you're talking about. The voice caught everyone's attention and they turned to see a villain holding a marble. I took him with my magic. Thank you all for sticking around and I hope that you enjoyed. Before you leave, we would just like to let you know that We the Celestials has many other channels for your entertainment and viewing purposes. All the information you'll need is right below here in the description. So feel free to check out all the other incredible projects our team creates. Secondly, on behalf of We the Celestials, I'd like to thank everyone involved in the production of today's awesome content. Their details will be in the description below. That's all for today's video. So goodbye and have a divine day.